Now I invite Chelsy Selvan to make the presentation. She is a doctoral student at the EFLU University in Hyderabad, and I think her supervisor is also here, Leena. She is working, or she's finished working on translanguaging in the classroom, so which is a very micro kind of aspect of multilingual education. So we wait to hear from you.
Hello, welcome all. Today my presentation title, Enhancing ESL Teaching Through Pedagogic Translanguaging, Evidence from Kerala, is actually part of my PhD research that I conducted in EFLU University. And so I'll present some parts of the findings. So like part one, we discuss the context of the study, then move to some aspect of theoretical framework that we used, and the research design, and the results and future implications. So the background, like we discussed yesterday, so our learners, there are a lot of research that came up suggesting that multilingual learners are cognitively advantageous over the monolingual learners. So the multilingualism is an advantage. But when we come to studies in Indian context, there is a disadvantage among Indian multilingual learners, especially from low resource contexts, not especially, it's actually affecting the low SES background learners, socioeconomic background learners. And when the studies in Indian classroom also found that the teachers use L1 in English medium of instruction. So L1, or the mother tongue home language, is present in EMI classrooms. So we actually place our study in this context. So there is a literacy and comprehension challenge faced by our low SES learners from low socioeconomic background, and there is a multilingual practice that exists in our classrooms. So what creates this gap? What can we do to reduce this gap? That's the background of our study. And so we use pedagogic translanguaging. So there was discussion about translanguaging yesterday, and the theory of Garcia defines translanguaging as a natural practice of bilinguals using their entire multilingual repertoire or repository. And we actually use the term pedagogic translanguaging. So we are actually taking a balancing turn where we support or we endorse the idea of languages, the hierarchy of languages, the socio-political privileges or the material benefits of certain languages have. We are not like, we are taking Cummins and Max Swain's concept of translanguaging, means we actually accept the boundaries that exist in the society, and especially in the context of language education, and then ESL, EFL classroom. So Indian ESL classroom context, as I mentioned earlier, there's already using multiple languages to teach ESL, or English as a second language. Teachers use L1 to teach English. So we are actually taking translanguaging or pedagogic translanguaging to scaffold language learning in a low resource context. And the research design. So our key objective was to understand how the pedagogic translanguaging works in an ESL classroom. So it's a second language, English as a second language classroom. The use of home language, English in classroom, the functions of it, the strategies, then teachers' awareness, attitudes towards it, and how it impacts teacher education in Indian context. So, and the study was like a longitudinal study, which went across 9 months, and it's a classroom observation with repeated measures. The 6 rounds of classroom observation was conducted, and participants were 4 in-service teachers who teach in government-aided schools, work with low learners from low socioeconomic background. And the data collection were classroom observation data. So classroom interactions were analyzed. And then there was questionnaires in self-reflection data included. And the method of analysis where there was thematic analysis. We quantified the qualitative data, qualitative interaction data. So the part is a summary of participant profile and 4 teachers with MA BEd graduation who teach English, and 2 teachers also teach social science in English high schools. So the data collected from 8th standard, 8th grade, so high school teachers in government aided state syllabus schools. And the learner participants, so our focus was on teachers, their pedagogic practices, and the learners profile or learners' socio-economic background would determine through teachers. So teachers were the mediating factors. Parents' education, parents' income, then the language profile of the learners were considered, because the language profile of the learners' home language or the parents, or the language they speak in their home is very important, because most of these learners, they get exposure to English only in classroom. So if they go back to home, the parents doesn't know to speak in English. So like I have had the same experience that I talk to my parents in Malayalam because they doesn't know any other language. But that's not a situation with other students. When I came to this Pondicherry University or EFL University, I realized that there are students who talk to my batchmates who talk to their parents in English. So that exposure is different. So these learners, they don't have any exposure, especially to print exposure or a communication in English outside the classroom. So the only exposure to English is this classroom, and we are giving a lot of content through English in this classroom, and that's not helping them to acquire the language or content competency. So, and the steps of data collection, we conducted an intervention questionnaire, we selected the demographic details, etc. Then an orientation discussion section. Then after this orientation or training session, we conducted classroom observations. There were 6 rounds. After each classroom, the researcher and the teachers sat together and we had one-to-one interaction where we reflected about their practices. How can we better it, change, or like there was a self-reflection section. And they were also asked to write diary notes across the training period. Then like that, so 6 rounds of classroom observation, and then there was a post-intervention questionnaire to understand whether there is a change in attitude, their awareness, understanding, or is there any impact on classroom in teachers and learners, etc. So this is a summary of steps of data collection we followed. And then in training, so training, like we discussed with teachers about the current study, the objective, then inquire about teachers' pedagogic practices, the existing practices, awareness on multilingual education, MLE programs, then we orient them on systematically using L1. So there was L1 use, home language or mother tongue teachers use, and we actually engage with them how to use it systematically. So systematic use can have a positive impact in classroom interaction or learner development. So, and we discuss with them on lessons and tasks to teach during the data collection process. So that lessons were taken from the class 8 SCRT textbook with the collaboration with the teachers, and we also developed tasks. So reading tasks, we developed reading tasks because reading comprehension is like the backbone, and we use multimodal approach, right? Writing, listening included in the task. So which we developed with the collaboration of teachers, and they were trained to integrate translanguaging or pedagogic translanguaging into it. And so the second stage is like after each classroom, based on classroom behavior and field notes, we track teachers' classroom practices in relation to translanguaging pedagogy and provide further training and input to developing the whole class teaching. So like that, and this is a summary of tasks they followed in the classroom. So there was picture recognition, match the following, sentence formation task, affixation using affix, prefix, and suffix. So the root word, collocation task, reading comprehension task. Then as a post-reading task, summary clause, sequential summary task. So, and these are a summary of tasks where they have to integrate translanguaging and teach. And so the way we give intervention is like we give some develop sample lessons, and we give them work to how to integrate this translanguaging. So this is I've taken the snippet from our materials we used, and where we give during the training and observation, teachers were provided with sample lessons, and these tasks were carefully designed, and we asked them to how to integrate. For example, so this is a lesson, Rosa Parks Sat Still, from class 8 SCRT Kerala, and so here the main concept is a narrative text, but the main concept is racism. The Rosa Parks was asked to stand up or not sit in the bus in America, because at that time blacks were not allowed to sit. Yeah. So we actually use, so the concept of racism was like something they didn't understand. The learners didn't understand, where teacher has to use translanguaging, because, and one teacher actually used not to make them understand that just a translation like Varna Vivejanam into Malayalam was not enough for them. So one teacher actually used a story of the Gandhiji was thrown out of train in South Africa, which many learners were familiar. So they could connect to racism using that. Another teacher used how we, in Malayalam, people use some derogatory words and phrases to make fun or put down people with dark complexion. So teachers use those examples to make them understand. So here we know that, so to make the concept understand, to make meaning, learners are required to give input in using their multilingual resources. It's not just teaching indirectly in one language, it's not enough for them to understand. And I'll briefly discuss some findings. So across 6 classrooms, we noticed that there is an increase in learner talk time. So the participation of learners in talk increased. And then there is an increase in number of words or linguistic input by the learners. So learners started to participate more in the classroom. So, and then the presence of English and Malayalam words. So there's always a criticism that when we use Malayalam, there will be no English in the class. So our study found that it's not like that. There is an increase in the use of both languages. Actually, the language, the classroom became more enhanced, more interactive, more complex and nuanced. So that there is increase in number of words. For example, it's the learner data, and we can see that there is a high increase in English words used by learners. So it's not like translanguaging or using multilingual pedagogy will, reduce, slow down the language development, but it actually adds to the, it's an additive force, not like subtracting. And then, and function. So the translanguaging is not like using random, it has certain functions that like to interpret tasks, to ask questions, to teaching grammar, or to teach vocabulary, or connect main idea to the whole test. So it's a reading comprehension context, right? So teaching metalinguistic, teach about language. So translanguaging or using L1 has a pedagogic functions, and it's not like randomly using, it serves pedagogic function. And teachers use, okay, we say translanguaging or using L1 is like just a translation. It's more than translation. It's like trying to, so one example is that learners, they couldn't connect to the word Hamlet. Okay, Hamlet was something they couldn't get. And teacher give the dictionary example like small village. And learners, what is a small village? Village, how it is different from a village, small village, big village. And one student asked that, is it a ward? That is, like in Grama Panchayat, there are wards. So one was asking, is it a ward? Because they cannot connect the idea of Hamlet is something very foreign to them. So when teacher has to explain it, again, like priest, there was a Japanese folklore where the idea of priest or monk was actually what you call different from what they heard as priest. So here again, L1 input was important. And so then we concluded with a questionnaire where, since it's an ESL classroom, we inquired that what's their impact on English language. And learners responded that one learner was only, I mean, except one, all the learners, the learners reported that translanguaging has improved learners' vocabulary, sentence formation, or helped in better comprehension. But teachers were doubtful how it impacted their oral communication skill, which we need further study. And so summary of findings, I'm not going to it. And then expected outcome. So what we follow is a teacher education or orientation method or bottom-up training model where we sit with teachers. So it's like educating and orienting teachers. So where we sit with teachers and giving inputs on the pedagogy or concepts, and then practice, giving them space for practice. So we use classroom interaction. It can be peer practice, and then observation. We collected observation and feedback, and then self-reflection, giving them space, teachers for self-reflection and peer mentoring. So we didn't use peer mentoring, but that's a possibility. So this method, so bottom-up training teacher education method, where we try to implement effective multilingual practices through which teachers can enhance their pedagogic skill, which will surely impact learners' literacy and comprehension development. So we propose that it's not the L1 is not a challenge, or it's not a disadvantage, but an advantage which we have to use effectively and systematically to develop learners' comprehension or enhance classroom practices. That's a summary. Thank you.